All right. I could just groove all afternoon. That music was amazing. I thank you for everybody who loved it and everybody else who didn't. I give us your selection and we'll play it next time. I want to welcome you to today's fantastic webinar. Thank you for being with us today. I am your host, Anne-Marie Burton, and I am so excited to have this topic, navigating career shifts with confidence and clarity. I have to tell you, this is one of the most requested topics by our members. Every time we have webinars, we ask you a quick question. What topics would you like us to discuss? And everybody's like navigating career shifts, navigating career changes. How do we get clarity around what this looks like, right? And today I have the most amazing panel. First of all, like shout out to my ELDP alum who are representing. You'll be hearing their buyers, and you will agree that we have the best assembled folks to talk to you about career shifts. What does it mean to shift, right? And so without much ado, I want us to jump into this conversation. Don't be shy. We want your questions. We are here for you. We're here to answer any questions you may have. We understand that career shifts are conversations that sometimes people have in isolation, or maybe you're having with a coach. And I hope that what we discuss today will be really, really helpful for you, because you're going to be speaking with people who've been in the media space, but who've also worked in multi-sector, various industries. And so please ask them the questions. We are here for you, and use the Q&A. As you all know, don't put it in the chat. Put it in the Q&A. If you want us to get to your question, please put it in the Q&A. All right, we're going to kick off with introductions, and then as soon as we are done, we are going to dive right in. All right, let's start with the intros.
Anne-Marie Burton is the Chief of Strategy and Programs at NAMIC. Her portfolio includes developing, executing, and sustaining NAMIC strategic initiatives, including education programs, chapter and member relations, meetings and conferences, and fundraising support. Ms. Burton has over 15 years of experience across several leadership and management positions in the nonprofit sector. She has a proven track record of leading effective teams, developing and implementing revenue growth strategies, and delivering results. Amaya Capellán was named the Commonwealth's Chief Information Officer in July 2023. In this role, she has overall responsibility for the management and operation of IT services for all executive agencies under the governor's jurisdiction. Amaya has nearly 20 years of professional experience in technology consulting, startups, and customer experience. She previously worked for Comcast, where she was instrumental as a leader of digital transformation for its customers. As Vice President of Product Management in the Technology, Product, and Experience Unit, Amaya led app strategy, identity management, and servicing and account experience for the Xfinity app, which is available to 30 million customers. In this role, she oversaw the launch of the app, which combines 6 apps into one unified platform, a transformation which grew active users from 1 million to 8 million per month. In other roles, Amaya helped launch Xfinity Mobile, a wireless service, and then led the strategy, pilot, and initial launch of Comcast Business Mobile, tailoring the service and offering for small, mid-size, and enterprise customers. Amaya has also held product leadership and strategy positions at PeopleLinks, a venture-backed business-to-business sales startup, Booz & Company's technology and communications practice, FCB Global, an ad agency, and an e-learning startup in Madrid, Spain. In these roles, she helped to lead companies through key moments of transition by working collaboratively to define products, strategies, and processes that leverage technology to drive outcomes. Amaya holds a Bachelor of Economics from Princeton University, an MBA from Wharton, and a Master's in International Studies from the University of Pennsylvania. She resides in South Philly with her wife Allison and their 8-year-old son Santiago. Olga Fonaryov is a seasoned HR executive, career coach, and trusted advisor with more than 20 years of experience leading people strategies across global technology, media, and high growth organizations. She has guided companies through large scale transformations, including post merger integration, talent management, and culture change, while empowering employees to thrive in their careers. As the founder of Hire HR Pro, her practice, she calls HR therapy, Olga has coached professionals at all stages of their journeys, helping them secure promotions, negotiate significant salary increases, and successfully pivot into new careers. She is recognized for her ability to align organizational goals with people strategies, building high performing and inclusive cultures anchored in trust, belonging, and growth. Olga currently serves as Vice President of HR at Cadent, a converged TV advertising platform where she partners with executives to drive organizational performance, employee engagement, and cultural integration across a global workforce. She holds a bachelor's degree in education from the College of Staten Island and is also an alum of Baruch College. Based in New York City and an avid traveler, Olga believes career breaks should be celebrated as proudly as career milestones, though she admits she's still waiting for that to catch on. Ramcess Jean-Louis is an attorney and HR labor relations professional with over 20 years of experience as a change agent delivering human capital solutions. As the Global Chief Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer at Pfizer, he develops and leads the execution of Pfizer's enterprise-wide strategies to advance equity and inclusion for all and remove barriers to opportunities for all colleagues. He advises human resources and business leaders on division and region-specific culture initiatives. His priorities include, but are not limited to, creating the strategy, infrastructure, and programs to ensure Pfizer attracts and retains the best talent from all backgrounds so the company can fulfill its purpose, breakthroughs that change patients' lives. Driving a holistic approach, Ramcess oversees the teams responsible for innovating and executing Pfizer's global inclusion programs, supporting patient and health equity efforts, colleagues, external communities, and supplier development and discovery initiatives. Ramcess' impact has been widely recognized. He has been named one of Savoy's most influential executives, honored among the Power 50 by Color Magazine, celebrated as one of the most influential global top 100 in health and wellness by the most influential people of African descent, and recognized as a top 100 diversity officer. These accolades reflect his lifelong dedication to building workplaces where everyone is seen, heard, and empowered. Prior to Pfizer, he was the Global Chief Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer at Verizon Media and the Director of Workforce Diversity and Inclusion at Comcast. His earlier career includes serving as an Assistant District Attorney in the New York City District Attorney's Office. Amy Yu is a cross-industry leader with a track record of building mission-driven teams and scaling high-impact products across tech, media, finance, and education. Most recently, she served as Chief Operating Officer of an early-stage EdTech startup and was previously VP of Product Strategy and Data Science at Paramount, where she led the design and development of platforms that enabled data-driven decisions across all of Paramount's portfolio brands. Amy holds a joint Bachelor's of Science in Computer Science and Economics from the Jerome Fisher Program in Management and Technology at the University of Pennsylvania, and a Master's of Science in Media Arts and Sciences from MIT Media Lab. Amy is an ELDP alum as part of Class 22.
All right. You have heard the wealth of experience we have on this call. And I want you to know that our panelists are not shy, and I hope you will not be shy. We have experience from finance to media to tech to HR to healthcare. So we hope that we can address as many questions as you may have for us. Now, let's jump right in. Each of you have navigated significant shifts across industries. We just had from your intros, right? From roles and even sectors, right? Media to health and so many others. How do you personally define a career shift? And do you perceive it as though it's about the title, or is it about the industry? Is it a mindset, or is it something deeper? Amy, why don't I start with you?
All right. So thanks everyone for having me. By the way, I'm really excited for this conversation and just super impressed with everyone's backgrounds. So for me, Anne Marie, I would say that a career shift really marks an inflection point in your own journey, wherever you are in that. And it could be a point of redirection, it could be a point of reinvention, or it could be a point where you're uncovering more of your own potential, right? But I think for myself, it's always been about noticing when it's a season of change, that whether it's something that's within your own control and choice, right? Like whether that's something that you pursued in terms of wanting to break into a different industry or going after a new role, or whether it was something that was a change that was outside of your own control, right? But it could be an externally visible change, whether that changes your title on LinkedIn or whether it changes, the industry that you're in or the organization that you're a part of. But it could also be where you're talking about when it comes to that shift in mindset, right? It could also be marked with changes in your life season, right? Changes in your own needs, in how you're defining success for yourself. And I think for me, it's more about you know just marking that season of change and seeing opportunities for growth and reflection. So I think it's a little bit of both, basically.
I really, really like that response, Amy. So, how have you managed to navigate those, especially at a time when we're looking at an industry where sometimes that's being imposed on people,
Mhm.
perhaps not so much self-driven. And I love that you are embracing this change in seasons, right? And you're making it really so much broader. How have you navigated that? Perhaps let me put a pin on when it's imposed on you. How about that? How
Sure.
have you
So
navigated?
So that's a really good question because I actually went through that last year in 2024. So I'm actually in the midst of this shift right now. And last year, I left Paramount as a part of a rift that happened in early February. Um, and at that point, that was a change that was not under my control, unfortunately, and it came at a time where I just come back from my second parental leave, so it was also a change in season in my life at that point. Um, and for me, I really took that as a time to kind of reflect on where were my priorities in terms of my career at that point and what was important to me and what I really wanted to do in terms of my career at the time. I think my perspective at that time had shifted to focusing on EdTech because I became also a parent of two young kids and seeing them grow up in a society that's also, being disrupted by technology and by data and AI. I had spent my career, focusing on building data literacy in corporations and building these types of skills within companies and within large organizations. And I really became more interested in thinking, how do we build that for the next generation, right? And so that was what drew me into exploring the ed tech industry. And I ended up having conversations that led me to my previous company Chibitronics, which was an early stage hardware and SaaS company. Um, I'm in the midst of a shift myself this year as well because I'm now a recovering COO. I left that company earlier this year because of funding challenges coming after the new administration came into place. We had a runway that was funded through SBA and SBIR grants. And so, after that was jeopardized, and my role ended up being eliminated from that company, I decided to intentionally take more of a sabbatical this time, actually. And so, Olga, your point in your bio around, celebrating both career milestones, but also career breaks. That's something that I ended up letting myself take this time around. And I'm also, within a season of change myself right now in terms of coming back on in the fall and actually restarting and thinking about my own next steps. So yeah, it's been a season of constant change for me actually, and so you've caught me at an interesting point in having this conversation. Um, but for me, it's been really helpful to continue to build my own community around thinking about my next steps and reaching out to my network, and building that community of support and in finding what's next for myself as well.
Thank you so much, Amy. And I just love that the candor in which you bring into this, because it's also a time of reflection, and that can have some very interesting consequences as we're thinking about that. Let me pull in Olga, because she's such a natural next step to this, talking about those breaks. And Olga, same question to you. How have you navigated those shifts across industries? And let's kind of touch on that point in your bio about those breaks and how you've navigated those, if any. Oh, by the way, you're on mute. You're still on mute, Olga.
Challenge accepted. Mute. Thank you, Anne Marie. I could probably talk forever about the career breaks. It was one of the best times in my life. But I'll focus on the question first. And I do agree with Amy that I think the career shift, what it means, right? It's very, very personal, right, for each individual. For somebody, it's a title. For somebody, it's something else. I love the season of changes that Amy talked about. For me personally, it was leaving my corporate job after almost 20 years in HR and starting something of my own. It was something I never even thought about. Like, I never saw myself as an entrepreneur. I always sort of spent my life in corporate America and had a very unexpected career growth. I didn't plan my career growth. I didn't set out to be like the head of HR. I just worked really hard, and like the next thing came, and the next opportunity came, and with each layoff or opportunity, be somebody tapping me on the shoulder, something new came along. So this was a moment. So when I left, it was when was it? It was 2024. It was April 2024. And I left BCG. I was consulting there, basically working full time. And that contract ended. It lasted about 2 years. And I was at this crossroad of entering a market that was just, really tough market at the time. Um, and it was hard, right? My confidence wasn't there. Even though I have a plethora of experience, telling your own story is really, really hard. Just because you're very skilled, it doesn't always mean that you're selling yourself really, really well. And those two really do have to connect. So, after 20 years, I said, you know what? I'm going to take a risk and pursue something I never thought about. I mean, the one thing I was certain is that I loved coaching. I helped employees throughout my career. I was I was very passionate about employee advocacy. And so I said, well, why don't I take this while I look for a job, but not be solely consumed by that job search and pursue this passion on the side. That's how it sort of started. And I do think sometimes this career shifts are forced on us, right? Some are very proactive and you're like, this has been my passion and I want to do it. But mine was sort of forced on me, right? I was like, okay, what do I do? I don't have a job. I have to look for a job, but how can I make this time while I'm looking for the right? I was very focused on finding the right match, right? There were like a lot of deal breakers for me. So I think one of the things during the career shifts, and I think maybe that's going to be later in our conversation, is that important for pause and reflection. I think Amy touched on that, right? What do you want to do? How do I want to proceed? Um, so, and it was really scary. I think that's the one thing that, we have to recognize. I had to recognize, like on paper, it looked really great. Like this confident decision, this bold idea. A lot of my friends were saying, oh, you'd be perfect. Like, I always go to you for advice. There's nobody else. Oh, HR therapy, that's going to catch on. It's like what you do, you help people having difficult conversations. But in reality, it was like, equal excitement and equal fear, right? So, and that's what I battled during that shift and pursuing this passion and see what I could make of it. So that risk was something like a big lesson that I learned through this process and how to manage that. Um, so yeah, so I think when career shifts happen, I see them less of like leaving something behind, more about that new path ahead. And if you focus forward, take those lessons you've learned, you could certainly find yourselves opening doors you never really expected.
Oh, I love that perspective. That is, I love this. So change is imposed or shifts are imposed on you. And we're hearing from Amy that there are seasons that can really open your eyes. Let's say she's raising young kids and all of a sudden she's looking at that and that's an opportunity. And there's Olga and she's leaning into her, what she believes is her passion. Anxiety, as you can hear, is something we all have as you're thinking of those shifts. And I love that our panelists are really candid about that. We're not going to sit here and say that it's easy, but there are ways to figure this out. Amaya, let me pull you into this conversation. Same question for you. How have you navigated these significant shifts and how are you defining career shift in your world?
Sure. Yeah, I think, Olga, you alluded to this earlier on in my career. I was really focused on gathering skills, increasing my earning, chasing titles and things like that. And that was how I was thinking about moving through my career. And, I had the opportunity a couple of times to be tapped on the shoulder with an opportunity, which was fantastic. But that made it so that I didn't have to think so deeply about what I really wanted. So I think stepping back and what I'd say now, especially having made this shift from a career in the private sector to this public sector job, what I really thought about as that opportunity, was in front of me a couple of years ago was, what's the environment that I can drive impact? How can I change the environment that I'm in? And how, in that new environment, how I can learn new things and be challenged in new ways, right? And then also, so the environment was one piece, obviously, changing so drastically, from Comcast to the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. But it was also about the opportunity, right? And how that offered new ways to grow. So this job has been about leading an organization, which I hadn't yet had the opportunity to do, and has been a huge privilege. But flexing, how do you do that? How do you manage a big team like that? And how can I challenge myself and stretch myself in new ways, right? But that's happened. I think the environment is one of the biggest factors, right? Because it's about, what is the culture like? Who are the people that you work with? What kinds of skills are required for success? And in navigating that career shift, it's been interesting to see as I've gone through it, how those things have come true. But, earlier in my career, I decided to change my environment and out of college, go to Spain to learn my father's culture more, improve my Spanish, and also take a risk and dive into an opportunity that I had with a dual passport. I was like, I probably later in life, I won't do this. And I knew no one. I moved there without a job, a little bit of savings and a credit card and some loans, but I made it work. And I think that early experience of stretching myself to make something out of, starting really from scratch in Spain has been a huge boon to me. So career shift to me is about, sure, the title, the industry, but I think it's that mindset of what's this new environment and how can I learn from it and how can I drive impact in it.
I love that. Everything you said about just even going to Spain, it just speaks of courage and the ability to try something new. And of course, that speaks of mindset. That speaks of seeking something deeper within yourself. And I think shifts can allow us to do that if we embrace that the shock and then think of that next plan, right? Ramses, talk to us. Same question. Tell us your journey.
Absolutely. Thank you. Well, I am super excited to be here. Thank you for having us, Anne Marie. I'm super excited to be here with such an esteemed list of panelists. I think everybody captured it well. You know, to me, there's a few different things that you can look at. So there's career shifts, there's industry shifts, there's also sometimes a shift in focus. So taking a look at my career, you know, start off my career as a prosecutor at the Manhattan DA's office. I think that's probably one of the largest career shifts that I did. And, you know, sometimes it's good to reflect to kind of have an understanding of why I made those shifts. I left the DA's office because one, I always wanted to be a trial attorney. I view myself as a storyteller first and foremost, whether I'm telling stories in a courtroom in front of a judge or whether I'm going through a business plan or looking at data and convincing, you know, executives that they need to move in a certain direction. But as a prosecutor, at the end of the day, it's my responsibility to lock people up. I didn't feel I was having the impact that I really wanted. It's great work. It's important to have good prosecutors and good defense attorneys on both sides. So really great work. But again, I felt like I needed something more aligned with my purpose and for me to have a greater degree of impact. So after that, I had an opportunity to lead human resources, labor relations, or legal in different Fortune 500 organizations. So thoroughly enjoyed that. So I would say my focus shifted, you know, still a string of employment law with regards to all of the other aspects that I've done. As of the last 4 or 5 years, I did a major career shift, we can call it, you know, from media and technology to the healthcare space. So again, I feel as if, you know, the work is still, my practice still looks pretty much the same, a holistic approach to what does diversity, equity, inclusion look like across, you know, who your customers are. For us, we talk about our patients, what the workplace looks like, and what does social investment look like from a supply engagement perspective, as well as from a philanthropic perspective as well. I would say, you know, a shift in industry sometimes could play a very large role. So I remember when I was working at Comcast, sometimes we'd be in a room and we'd be working on a challenge and we'd be like, hey, look, at the end of the day, we're not trying to come up with the cure for cancer here. We should be able to figure this out. Now I'm at Pfizer. We're actually trying to come up with the cure for cancer. So again, you know, doing the work of diversity, equity, inclusion, large components, what does inclusion look like for your customer and for your patient? So again, at Comcast, it was the focus on multicultural content. How are we really creating stories for everybody? At Pfizer, it's really about health equity. How do we really make sure that everybody's seen, heard, and cared for? And again, our vision is to create breakthroughs that change patients' lives, all patients, not certain demographics, not certain socioeconomic classes. So again, I think having career shifts, maybe in different industries, you can respond and react to it differently. So
Wow, I really love that. We like to joke that we're not performing heart surgery, but when you said that, it really hit home because yeah, you really are in that space right now. And very similarly, it's interesting. I've worked in the health space, I have worked in the tech space, now I am in media entertainment. I feel like I did it the other way around that than you guys. Like you left and then I came in, right? So and I have a legal background, so totally get it. My first job was actually in HR, and in that job, we had to do layoffs. Talk about impact. I realized that's not the impact I was trying to have, and then I made a major career shift after that. So let's talk about what this transition really look like and some of the key lessons yeah, that lay in these transitions. I know I'm seeing a couple of questions. Keep those questions coming. Everybody, just a reminder, do not put them in the chat. If they're in the Q&A, we will definitely get to them. Amaya, why don't I begin with you? We've talked about your transition, right? From startup. I just love your portfolio. It's so broad, right? It's like the startup, and then there's the consulting, and then there's the media and entertainment where most of our audiences are right now, right? And now you're the chief, you know, the CIO for in the public space, right? Like I always say public sector and private sector can be very night and day. Let me just put it that way. So hearing from you, what lessons about adaptability and risk taking can professionals draw from your journey?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think let me talk about adaptability first. And what I've learned throughout, but certainly in this more drastic shift, is know your skills, but be prepared to use your skills in different and often unexpected ways, right? As by the way, if you ever need a confidence boost, have that gentleman who read our bios just read something about you. So
I agree.
as as was covered during the intro, where when I left Comcast, I had been working on, a major effort to, launch this new Xfinity app, really kind of navigate a lot of, internal teams who all wanted to kind of do their own thing. And, we were kind of losing the customer as a result of that by having very fragmented experiences, right? So that was a great, I learned a lot about, and I know that I'm a people leader and I'm a strategist, and I use my, leadership skills. I use my ability to connect with all different kinds of people and to create a clear strategy to get there. So going to this job, I knew that those were the skills that I was going to call upon. But when I got there, and I was like, okay, so Commonwealth Pennsylvania IT, there's all these people are like, oh, you're going to fix a DMV website? Like, what's, how can you make that better, right? And my background was more customer experience focused. I was a product manager. I was used to working with development team, but my portfolio is broad. It's from deploying laptops to, government employees to things like cybersecurity. And I say cybersecurity because, I joined in 2023 and we were looking at a major election year with Pennsylvania as a swing state and, wanting to ensure secure elections. That quickly became a focus. So was I an expert in cybersecurity? I was not. Did I have the skills that I need to call upon? Yes. So I worked to find a great technical leader, incredible leader to come in and bring his know-how and skill set. I learned, I probably have asked him at least 1 million questions so far. That's an actual count, right? So I learned from his expertise and the team, and my job in that situation was to ensure we could advocate for what the team needed to be successful, what was missing that we didn't have, and make a clear case so we could make changes to prepare us. And so I use my strategy skills, my communication skills, my leadership skills. So did I, was when I walked into the job, did I think that I was going to become a bit of a cybersecurity expert and work on election security? No, I did not at all. But did I know what my skills were? Yes. Did I use those? Yes, I did. So that's been a huge lesson for me in this job. And then you mentioned about risk taking as well, right? So definitely have, done some courageous things across my career. Certainly moving to Spain, was a great start to my career. But I think I still have to learn. And I think in this job, don't be your worst enemy, right? I was my own biggest threat to getting this job, right? When I got that email from a recruiter sort of reaching out about the opportunity, I was like, that's random. That's nice. And that's flattering. And I was like, the voice in my head of like, you gotta make the call, like at least see what this is about. Right. And at every step of the way, I was like, well, that's nice that I got the first round interview, but I'm sure they have much more qualified candidates. I'm not gonna get this job. Right. And I really had to just, it was a huge lesson for me in pushing past that imposter syndrome and, demonstrating the skills that I have, and also, going forward and getting it. So that's one lesson I've also learned.
Oh, I love that. You've touched on so many areas, and I know the questions will be coming in. We are our own worst enemy. And I like to say that a job description is just that. It's just that. There is so much more they're looking for, and the reason you are a good fit sometimes transcends beyond what you think you can bring to the table. Have the confidence to believe that you are it. If you, in tennis, we always say don't fight yourself and your opponent, because then it's 2 versus 1 and you're going to lose, right? So it's really up here, right? So I encourage you to be brave and lean in. If somebody says, you look at the job, a lot of us really stop at the job description. Oh my God, right? I love the examples you just gave, Amaya. Like a lot of times when you're in very senior roles, and it may not just be senior roles, there are things you'll be called upon that you never imagined, but somewhere along the way, you have the skills to manage them, right? And so trust yourself and trust the experience and the people that are saying that you're a good fit for that. Because being a leader doesn't mean being an expert at everything as well. It means exactly what she said, the ability to realize the skills needed to effectuate the success that is being required of you, right? And so think of the team and not just, oh my God, can I just do it? Because you're not a singular, you're going to be part of a team, right? So I feel like we tend to just discourage ourselves and just go, oh, I just can't do that. Can you imagine if in the interview there was a question about, so tell us about your cybersecurity election, this, you'd have just said, I surrender, I'm done, not for me, right? So that's a really good, and that imposter syndrome, my God, I can do a whole session on that, and the stories we tell ourselves about ourselves, and how they just continue to play in our heads. But kudos to you, I'm so proud of you, and the discovery, because everything is a discovery until you know and until you stop learning. Ram says, I wanna delve into your journey. So your career spans law, HR, DEI leadership. I mean, DEI leadership in 2025. Let me caveat that. And then media and technology. What guiding principles kept you grounded as you shifted from prosecutor to corporate change agent? And I just don't think your job is any easier right now, even though the title may not seem that heavy. In 2025, I can only imagine what that looks like. Talk to us about your journey and what keeps you grounded in terms of these changes that you've been making.
Absolutely. First I got to give a huge shout out and kudos to NAMIC. So I absolutely love NAMIC. Absolutely love my NAMIC ELDP class. We were the best class of 16. I keep in touch with my cohort. We stay connected. We stay in touch. I've learned so much from that. The reason why I want to start off by giving a shout out to NAMIC, because, one of the first opportunities I got in media and technology actually came from my affiliation with NAMIC. So I met someone through NAMIC. We kept in touch when they were able to get headcount over a period of years. We genuinely had a relationship. It wasn't a transactional relationship. She hired me and brought me into Comcast and NBC Universal at the time. And I would say from that point on, all of the opportunities I've had since then, I've been recruited for. So, when I take a look at, what's that guiding principle, for me, it's really making sure that you have quality work and you also have quality relationships. There's a couple of sayings out there. One of my favorites is that wealth is the accumulation of assets and relationships. I actually believe the latter is more important. Oftentimes people also think about, well, how do you get ahead at work? How do you get a promotion? Is it the quality of your work or is it the quality of your relationships? We all know in this call, it's both. But the quality of your work, that's a no-brainer. That has to be a given. It has to be absolutely outstanding, or else you won't be able to have anybody advocate for you. So again, for me, in terms of career progression and taking advantage and taking, advantage of opportunities to really grow your career is all about knocking things out of the park, doing the best that you can, and just really being curious and open to different opportunities. And sometimes it is, a little scary to kind of leave something that's safety, that represents a little bit of stability. But, for me, I think about Hamilton and I think about that song, My Shot. I'm not going to throw away my shot. And I actually have to listen to that song and I have to play it in my head. The whole idea and the concept of throw me the ball. Winners want the ball. I can't take a shot if I don't have the ball. So putting yourself out there is always something that's important. And I think, again, having the right mentors that's kind of brought me to where I am today, I try to play that same role for others. So again, you talked about diversity, equity, inclusion in 2025. Got to talk about the elephant in the room. Yes, a lot is happening. A lot is shifting. but you could continue to have and drive impact. And I think that's what many organizations are doing. Let's not get distracted by some others that might be turning corners or walking away. The vast majority of companies are making sure that, one, they are compliant with the law, they are following executives' orders. That's what we're doing here as well. But at the same time, we're not going to give up on making sure that all of our colleagues have a sense of belonging and they feel they can bring their authentic self into work. So again, really making sure that you align with your purpose and you continue to drive impact regardless of what's going on. When I take a look at my career, just overall, times where I've had the greatest period of advancements is during times of change and during times of restructuring. I remember working at a technology company on Wall Street where my boss, his role was eliminated. And then I started reporting into my boss's boss. And then after a while, his role was eliminated. So it was a time of a lot of change and a lot of restructuring, but I just kept on taking more responsibilities. And again, I bring it back to NAMIC and that ELDP class, because I remember there was a course, a module in there that really talked about what Amy was talking about, seasons. Everything happens in seasons. Industries go through seasons as well. There's a season where a lot of companies and a lot of industries are restructuring. There's a season when there's a lot of mergers and acquisitions. So again, it's being able to read the tea leaves and kind of make a decision in terms of, what type of person are you? How are you planning to show up? And continue to stay focused.
Oh, fantastic. I couldn't have said it any better. Let's see, Amy, I want to jump jump into this and think about, because like literally when Ramcess said seasons are like you're the next best. Let's go into these seasons. Wow. Your background, you've scaled products, you've led teams, and it's not lost on me, Amy, that you've led teams as a female in that tech space. I do want to mention that because I am curious about what that looks like from a female perspective, from an Asian female perspective, right? Like, how does that look when you're in a heavily male dominated space, right? And even in the startup space. So we're talking about tech again, heavily male dominated, finance heavily male dominated, right? And then obviously the media and then education space. What unique strategies helped you translate your skills across these industries? Maybe not so seamlessly, but when you looked at them, you are like, yeah, as Ramcess says, give me that ball, I got it.
Yeah, so I want to tie together a couple of ideas that all of us have been talking about. Ramcess, you talked about storytelling at the beginning, right? And about how important that is. And I think that is actually a core skill when it comes to translating your skills across industries is one, to Amaya's point around first grounding yourself and knowing what your core skills are and what value you bring to the table, right? But then being able to tie that into whatever your next chapter, whatever your next industry, or whatever your next organization is, right? Being able to connect your previous experience, your background, your skills, everything that you bring to that table, but being able to use storytelling and connect that thread through to your next step, to your forward path, right? And being able to tell that story in a way in which it connects with the new team that you're in, or the new organization that you're in. I think that is one of the first parts in terms of being able to do that translation. And then the second part is being able to identify what are your unknown unknowns. You're going to be stepping into an unknown space, into a new space, right? You're going to have to figure out how do you, first of all, identify your own blind spots, and your own opportunities for learning, and then figure out strategies for how do you scale those learning curves in order to have impact in your new role, in your new team. So for example, when I moved from Paramount to Chibitronics, right? I moved from a Fortune 500 company to a really early stage startup with less than 10 W-2 employees, right? But I was able to draw parallels in my experience even from Paramount in building a new team and a new product within the research organization. When I started at Paramount, I was actually the first product hire within a data science team within research. And we ended up building out an internal platform for data visualization and analytics. that was really instrumental at the time in terms of democratizing data science within the org. I took that experience with me to Chibi and understood, what it took to be scrappy and to build something from nothing, right? And to be able to figure out and identify who are your core stakeholders, who are the partners that we need to reach out to, both internally and externally, in order to make this new effort a success. And then, in terms of building and launching new products as well, right? Having done that scale up within a company like Paramount, I understood what it took to be able to translate that into an early stage startup and start figuring out what are the pieces that we need to build from the ground up. The second piece also, by the way, right, is that within my career, data and technology has been this underlying thread that has really connected everything for me because of the fact that that has really been disrupting industries across the board, right? Regardless of what industry you're in right now, something that you're working on is going to touch data, is going to touch technology. Those are transforming the way in which we do business and the ways in which we exist as a society today, right? And so bringing those core skills that I had around data strategy, around building product, around digital transformation, that's been something that's been translatable across all of the industries that I've worked in. And then the second part, in terms of learning, what I've realized is really important is cultivating a growth mindset for both myself as well as the teams that I've been in. Because, as we all on this panel know, nothing is static, right? Things are constantly changing. And the only way that you can continue to grow in that is to know how to learn how to learn. Basically, that in and of itself is a skill, right? Is to realize that skill sets are not fixed in time. They're not fixed in people, and they're not fixed in teams, right? That everybody has the capacity and the potential to learn and build new skills as things change around them in the different environments that they're in. So when I moved from media to EdTech, I really had to get up to speed quickly about new markets, new technology, and new systems. I didn't come from a background in online retail or electronics manufacturing or CAD software, or third-party logistics and international supply chain. So, it was actually really both humbling and exhilarating to, be in that environment where I had the opportunity to learn in all these new spaces. And kind of, bringing this all together, I think the thing that really makes you successful in that learning is building the right community of support around you as you're going through that process. So when you're in an organization, is focusing on who are the internal champions and collaborators that you can reach out to as you're in that process. I definitely, I like being in rooms such as this one where, everybody in the room is definitely, is smarter than me, right? In terms of a number of different things. And we all have things that we can learn from each other, right? Even in this call, I'm learning from all of you in this room at the same time, right? So, being surrounded in that type of community and plugging yourself into communities that can both support you in that learning process, champion you in that learning process, and introduce you to the new spaces has been really instrumental for me as well.
Oh, Amy, thank you so much. So I just want to quickly recap a couple of really critical nuggets that we're hearing here. Ramcess talked about this network and why that network was so critical to his success. And he gave you very specific examples. And Amy is talking about surrounding yourself with a community of people that you can learn from and that you can lean into. And I want to say that very broadly, not just career wise, but in a manner that challenges you and in a manner that kind of it becomes a mirror. I think we all need networks that are mirror where you go in and you can learn and you can lean into curiosity. And when she talks about being open to learning, it's kind of like this Amaya talking about, wow, like this job was about X and now I'm realizing that I'm being stretched, right? Jobs will stretch you and you'll need the right skills, the right networks, the right people. Part of my ELDP group, I will tell you, our WhatsApp group is always this, we're looking for somebody. It's the best network in the world. If you're looking for a job, if you're looking for skills, if you're looking for a recruiter, I cannot even tell you how much happens in those forums. You need that kind of network that's really has your back and can help you. And then how do you tell your story? That's we've had this over and over again. How do you tell your story? And then how do you assess what's important to you, right? Are you impact driven? Are you going to follow your passions? Are you looking to just be curious and learn a new skill, right? So we are hearing all these really amazing nuggets, and hopefully you guys are taking it in. I'm going to go to Olga and let's get that HR perspective, that HR strategist perspective when it comes to learning. And I like what Amy said, and I think this is something, Olga, I want you to touch on. Amy was talking about really knowing your blind spots, what when you know you don't know, right? And how you navigate that. As a coach and as a leader, as an HR strategist, you've helped so many people navigate uncertainty, right? What common patterns or blind spots do you see professionals encountering during career transitions?
Thanks, Anne Marie. And, Amy, I agree. I do feel like I'm learning a lot. So I'm just as invested in all the stories that are being told. So when I think about the common patterns or pitfalls that I've seen, I mean, there's many, and I've thought about this question, and I think number one is underestimating the emotional journey that happens in the process. Whether you've lost your job, whether you are so stressed and you hate your job and you feel like you need to do something else. Um, I think a lot of people that have come to me and, I help them to create a career strategy, right? Those folks really don't understand that, like, how much uncertainty triggers the fear and self-doubt, right? And that confidence gets affected. And that's the same confidence you need to tell your story, to interview, right? To do your elevator pitch. Um, so I think that taking a pause and giving yourself space in recognizing that emotional journey is really key to be able to move forward, right? In my own career, when I think about that emotional journey, I was laid off from a company and struggled with the confidence to interview. And I'm in HR. I should know how to do this. Eyes closed, right? But it's the same challenge that I faced was, I was thinking about why did I get, why was I riffed, right? Why was it me? Why, was I not good enough? You mentioned before, it's like we're our own worst nightmare, right? So we're our own worst critic, right? And sort of being left in those thoughts, I mean, it took such a toll on me that I had to take a step back, clear my head, and pick myself back up and come in with confidence. So I actually think about the Cadent interview, right? So it was 2 years into my journey, focusing on my business and coming across this opportunity that I actually didn't think much of it. I almost didn't care about it. I said, well, I'll take a conversation. And one thing next led to another. And I think I had one of my best interviews that I could remember. One, because I didn't overthink it. I came in with a great level of confidence, right? Um, so it's really being self-aware. I think that applies to everything that we do. So the other trap I think I find clients caught in is like waiting to have a full plan, like waiting for that clarity, right? So many professionals I find like stall because they want like absolute clarity. They want, here's my plan. I know exactly what's next. This is how I'm going to approach it. But that leads to indecision. And so I think that believing that each action drives momentum, that drives that path where you end up, right? So I think that don't wait to have for my business, I mean, again, I was sort of put in the position, I wanted to keep busy, right? I mean, that's where the passion came from. I said, I want to keep busy. I don't know how I'm going to do this. I've never thought about being an entrepreneur. So I'm just going to start doing it. I know people need help with looking for work. I know that I'm struggling with the same thing and there's so much that I have to offer, right? So I just sort of started doing this through word of mouth, talking about it, and things would click, right? And then somebody was like, "Oh, do you have a website?" I'm like, "Oh, yeah, I should put a website together." "Oh, what's the name of your company?" "Right, I should come up with a good name for a company." But none of that was like part of a plan, right? So don't wait. Just start doing, start taking action, right? And that clarity will come with that movement, right? Um, and I think we talked a little bit about that fear of rebranding and what people might think and what, I mean, I even remember thinking, okay, I have to make a post on LinkedIn that this is what I'm doing, right? And then I got caught in thinking, well, what are people going to think? Oh, I can't find a real job. This is what I'm doing. I was so hard on myself. I was almost mean to myself. And again, reflection, getting through that and taking a step back and saying, you know what? I don't care what people think. I am pursuing something I love. I know that I'm going to impact people's lives, right? People's careers. I mean, I've helped people negotiate like, 40, 60% more in their salary, life changing, right? And so through that, I just became again more confident in sharing my story. And who cares what people think, right? Like, am I doing something that I love? And so that story, and I think Amy and I think a few folks talked about the importance of clarifying that story, practicing that story, right? Adjusting that story based on your audience, because that's really important, right? If you're in one room, it might be a different story. If you are just exploring an opportunity, maybe that story shifts. So it's not just articulating what you did, but it's what they want to hear. So you always want to think about who's the audience and what do they want to hear, right? How do you show up, how do you show up and what's the value that you want to capture in that tone? Um, so yeah, so I mean, there's obviously I could keep going. Things like not to focus identifying with a title or a company, right? A lot of skills are very transferable. So you have to take those tactical skills and changing them to more strategic competencies. AI is a great tool in helping you reframe your messaging, reframe your skill set, reframing your resume. ChatGPT, or whatever platform you're using, you don't always need a coach. There's a lot of tools out there that could help you brainstorm independently in how you could tell your stories and how you could reposition your messaging.
Olga, thank you so much for that. I really like everything you've just said and everything everybody has said. And I think I want to go to the Q&A questions in just a second. But here are some things I just want to share with you. I want to give you a story about my journey that's really interesting. And Olga, actually, you reminded me of this. When you overthink, you can really overthink things. And I want to tell you that when you are yourself, and Ramcess talked about this, always putting your best foot forward, always giving your very best work, your highest quality. That's really your brand, by the way. You may not know it, but it is your brand. And you just had people talk about when you're looking for somebody who's this and you're looking for somebody who's that, and the underlying thread will be, I want a person who can get the job done. That's the underlying thread in all that, right? Because the person bringing you in is also looking for success. But I want to talk about always being yourself and putting your best foot forward, even in moments that may not be fully planned. Early on in my career, I was working on a thesis, and my thesis was about looking at structural conflicts in the workplace. And I was doing my master's, and it was based on this very thing, that a lot of times conflict in the workplace is really not about personalities and a lot of the things. It's about the structure of the organization, and those things create conflict and what have you. I will not give you the whole thesis. But here's the interesting thing that happened. During my lunch hour, as I was going over my thesis, a gentleman whom I did not know in the company, because I was very junior, came and said hello, just like a water cooler conversation. And I said, hello. And he said, what are you working on? And I said, oh, I'm in the middle of my thesis and I am looking at structural conflicts within organizations and how they lead to loss and unnecessary blah, 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 whatever I said at the time. And notice I didn't know who he was, so I didn't have my game face on. I wasn't trying to impress. I was really just talking about this thing that I was really passionate in researching. Long story short, a week later, I got an invitation to HR. I really thought I'd done something wrong. Maybe I wasn't supposed to study during my lunch hour or something. And it turns out that they wanted to discuss my thesis. How interesting. Opportunities will show up when you're always giving your very best, even at times when you don't plan it. I want to tell you that an organization that I went into as a junior employee, when I explained my thesis, I got a job in the CEO's office. Opportunities will knock when we least expect them. So we always have to be ready. And being ready doesn't mean, oh my gosh, now is the time I'm going to go and find that job. You should always be finding a job. You should always be networking. And please don't just lean into your network when you need something. You know, I call that, we talked about quality relationships, right, Ramses? Where you're keeping in touch with people, you're checking in on people. It's not always driven by, oh, I want something, because you just never know where those opportunities may happen. And you are more than a title and you are more than just a job function. So when people ask you about yourself, be broader. Don't just stick to, oh, this is what I do and this is my skill set. You know, tell them about your passion. Tell them about this book that you read and how it has you thinking about the future of XYZ, because you just might not know that they wanted that curiosity so that you're a good fit. A lot of jobs, yes, they want you to be skilled. And if you don't get it, like Olga was saying, and you're second guessing yourself, it's not about your skills. Honestly, it's always about cultural fit. And that thing is so nebulous, you can never really hit it on the head. Right? But just remember, it's not you. Don't be so critical. It's about fit and however they're defining fit for that season, because we do know it changes, organization change. And so it's about fit. And so please don't be too hard on yourself as you're thinking, oh my gosh, I didn't get this is the fifth interview and I didn't get the job. It's not necessarily the skills per se. It just could be a matter of fit. And so please follow up and ask questions. Just because they say no doesn't mean that somebody in HR may not give you really good feedback that you can act on. So I want to talk about what Olga was, and going back to our panelists, because I was trying to tie in a lot of really good nuggets that you are all sharing about this portable skills. Olga, you touched on that, like using AI to help you redefine that. How can our audience really learn from all of you in terms of portability? How are they, let's pretend that they have a resume and right now they're in the media space, but we really want to, there are opportunities for them in healthcare, there are opportunities for them in the public sector. How do they assess portability? Who would like to take that?
I mean, I could jump in really quickly. I think, first of all, it's understanding what are the key skills that you have, right? Not the tactical, right? You could say you managed project versus driving alignment across stakeholders, right? Those are two very different things, right? Building dashboards versus translating data into business insights. So first of all, it's really capturing the essence of the skill in a more strategic way that could be applied in any different industry. And if you're looking at the job, I mean, I'm going to go really like prescriptive or tactical here, right? You're looking at a job description that just seems like really off from your resume. Ask AI, right? I'll refer to ChatGPT. That's my go-to, right? Help me translate my resume to closer match this job description, right? Now, obviously, you could, and what it does, it just gives you ideas. You're not going to copy paste. Don't do that. But what it does, it gives you ideas. I'm like, wait a minute, that's right. it's the same thing. You'll find some parallels, right? You could pick and choose which portion of your resume you could sort of play with, right? But it's just a way to brainstorm, right? What, and you could ask, what are the key skills required for this job, right? Having that job description, and again, go back to your history and understand how you could demonstrate those skills. How could you speak to those skills? So it's just a reshaping your story, right? It's reinventing how you maybe see yourself, but in a different light as it relates to this job. Um, so I'll pause here. And the other great tip, I think, is also speak, like we talk a lot about the network. Sometimes it's like really helpful to ask your prior boss or people in your network, right? Like, how do you see me, right?
Mm.
Across every role that we've worked together, right? What was I, what did I do really well? Because I think sometimes people see things in us that we don't see in ourselves, right? So it's
Oh,
just an
yeah.
additional lens.
Oh, I really like that. I think in ELDP we had to do that exercise. Anybody remember that? You had to identify folks that would give you. We had very specific questions, obviously, but you couldn't always just go to your champions. Remember that? You had to go to like somebody, maybe a boss that you may not have had the best relationship with, and essentially you had to tap into a network and maybe some people you'd rather avoid. But that was such a good mirror, right? Anybody else want to jump in?
I'll go quickly. I think just to that point, keying off of what Olga and Emery are saying about knowing your skills and asking those people, if I think I've saved a lot of the performance reviews that I've had over my career, and like read a few of those, because like when you do, you're like, wow, there's a pattern here, right? I think also if you've had the opportunity, like in programs like NAMIC, to take some of those like professional tests, right? Like personality tests, as it were, those evaluation tools, like, because that's always going to be like the core of who you are, right? And then how it usually maps to a work environment. Though, Olga, you said a lot of amazing things. I think the only thing that I'd say about, in terms of thinking about the portability of those, but think about, like, I keep on thinking, and I said this earlier, about the environment you're taking them to, right? Why are they portable to this new job? What is it about the job? What I learned in reflecting was that I am as the gentleman with the wonderful voice said in the beginning, like I have been, the thread is that I'm in places at times of transformation and change, and I jump into that and I help the organization drive through it. So when, I saw this job description for the CIO, one of the things that I really latched onto is transformational leader. That's what, as I got through the process, are like, hey, we're looking for someone to drive change. Like, that's what we're looking for. So I think it's also looking at the place, the environment, the job, the people on the other side, and are your skills gonna, work well there? Are they gonna be received well? So yeah, that's a couple of things I'd add.
Thank you. I have a question from one of our audience. And she asks, I think we've tried to get to this. Let's see. What has been the single most important thing that has been helpful on your journeys? What you know, who you know, your go-getter attitudes, being malleable, or all the above?
Can
This
you
is a
say that again?
It's a question from Bridget. Bridget, hopefully you're here and I'm not butchering your question. It says, what has been the most important thing that has been helpful on your journeys? Essentially, what you know, who you know. I think we're missing something there that says your go-getter attitudes, or maybe being malleable, or all the above. Who can make sense of that one? Ramses.
I'm happy. I'm happy to jump in. I
Thank you.
definitely think if you've kind of established your brand to be the go-to person, that's definitely what's going to lead you. But you got to think about what goes into being the go-to person. You can't be a go-to person if your work is not completely outstanding. You'll never be a go-to person if you don't know how to do stakeholdering and driving consensus and learning how to influence. So it's really all of the above. All of those things kind of really play into it. And also I loved everything, everyone was talking about. I loved the examples that Olga gave. As we everyone on the line continue to grow our career, I'm also thinking about the other people that we're bringing along as well. And just some additional missteps I think is important for people to be mindful of that I have noticed, especially as people shift between careers or industry. And you don't want to be on either extreme. You know, I've been in situations where I've seen some outstanding smart people come in and they're constantly keeping track of the calendar saying, hey, I've only been here for 3 months. I've only been here for 9 months. It's only been 18 months. And sometimes they just don't stop. And then literally, you know, with how fast everything is going, after about 6 months, nobody wants to hear that anymore. You know, shut that down. And then you have some other folks that may come from other industries and they don't stop talking about it. Well, when I was at ABC Company, this is how we used to do it. And at ABC Company, they knew that this was, no one wants to hear that as well. So again, self-awareness is important. So going back to what Anne Marie said, that lesson that we did at NAMIC, where we went around and we talked to folks, and you can't just go to your cheerleaders, that's incredibly important. Self-awareness is important. You got to know who your board of directors are, and you got to, know what that check-in looks like.
Oh,
I'll just
Ramsey, that is so critical. Can I just quickly say, once you get the job, and this was a tip from my coach many years ago, once you've been hired and you're on the job, stop continuing to interview for the job. Don't be like hyper performance because now you need to prove you got the job. Just just do the job. And everything Ramses said, leave the past behind. They know that's why they brought you in. Leave the
And I
past
think
behind.
I agree. And I think that goes to what Olga was saying. You know,
Yes,
you have to deal with your emotional baggage, and you may not realize you have it, but you do.
you
If you're
do.
going out for interviews and you're getting tons of interviews, but you're not getting jobs, you might be coming across thirsty. And you
Mm.
have to talk to somebody and be like, am I coming? Because it's true. If you're coming across thirsty, people don't want to hire you. They're like, there's some other things going on. Other ways that you can come across entitled. If you come across as entitled and you're giving speeches of, well, this other person got promoted and I got passed over, if your conversation sounds like that, people know oftentimes entitlement turns to resentment. Folks don't want to have to deal with that.
Good. Excellent. Someone was about to add something. Sorry, who was it?
I
Did
think it
I?
was me. I mean, there's so many good things here. I will say, Ramsey, just to follow you up, being humble gets you more. I mean, that when especially when you change industries, I think some people, as you said, sort of lean into like kind of trying to prove that you know everything. No, come in with curiosity. So come in with asking a lot of questions. Don't pretend you're an expert. You might be like I'm an expert in HR. I'm not an expert in ad tech, right? I just joined 5 months ago, an ad tech company. I've worked with sales. I've worked with technology SaaS companies. But ad tech space is very new and it's confusing and it's difficult and it's all these acronyms. They're very new. So what am I doing? The first 30, 60, 90 days, I'm asking a lot of questions. I'm asking people to teach me. Showing that desire to learn gets you more points than acting like you know what you're doing.
Well said. So I do want to acknowledge that a lot of the questions here we have answered. But if there's one that you don't think we've addressed, please let me know. I may not have read your name, but in the conversation, we've made sure that we've talked about mindset. We talked about, getting new skills, making sure you know what you know and don't know. We've talked about storytelling. There's a question here about how to be better at telling our stories. I'm going to get to that one, but I'm just quickly scanning the questions, and I think we've addressed most of those. I'm going to touch on storytelling I mean, we have about less than 15 minutes to go, but I want us to get some really specific details. Let's talk about maybe more of a future focused questions, because I think a lot of our audiences are in this space. If someone is facing an unexpected change, a layoff, the industry is getting disrupted, what are the first steps they should take to regain clarity? I'm really opening it up to, I know we've talked
Can you
about
just say the question one more time? I'll
if
jump
someone
in.
is facing an unexpected change, layoff, they know it's coming, or there's
Yep.
just a disruption. What is the first step they should take to regain clarity? Because we've talked about emotional baggage, and I think that speaks to that, knowing thyself and where you are, don't be thirsty, those kinds of things. But what are those first steps to regain clarity? Because normally that's a very jarring experience.
Yeah.
You're worried about your bills, if you're the kind of person whose identity was tied to your job and your title, you're reeling from that emotionally as well. Then there's sometimes shame, which comes with that. And sometimes you don't even want to tell people you've been laid off. So what are those first steps they should take to regain clarity?
So I think I'll take this for a moment. Again, pause. Don't jump head first when you're just grieving. Pause to allow yourself to grieve. Take a moment, take a week. I know not everybody is able to take too much time off, right? Use your judgment. But even if it's a week, to be able to process that, there's so much power in that, because going in carrying all that baggage is just not productive. Then start making a career job, like a job search strategy, okay? Literally just write out a plan, create a document that says, here's what I need to do. Just make a list. It's a to-do list, right? Update my resume, update my LinkedIn, make a list of people you're going to reach out, people that you know. Scrub LinkedIn, right? Maybe you have 1,000 contacts, but those are not going to be everybody you're going to reach out to. Identify your top 10 companies that you love. Start following them on social media. Start following them on LinkedIn. Understand, like, stick to those top 10 companies and start looking at people who you know. Start prioritizing those people to connect with in those companies. So again, when you have a plan to act, you don't have to do it all in the moment's notice. But having a plan sometime and taking that first step gives you control. And I think when people lose jobs, their sense of control is gone. So, and this like powerless feeling that happens in that fragile state, if you have a plan, you start acting against it, that gives you your control back. And it gets you like one step closer to that, next chapter.
Excellent.
I agree. And in fact, I think everything that Olga just said, you could actually do that now. I have a quick story to share. An organization that I was working at, I was walking with the CHRO. We were in one of our global offices that we don't often visit. And, one of our colleagues was having a conversation with us because we were going through a lot of restructuring, saying, I'm just kind of nervous. There's just so much change happening. What would happen if my role was impacted? This person was looking for reassurance. The CHRO was like, let's unpack that for a moment. Let's talk about it. What would happen if your role was impacted? What would that mean? What would that mean for you? When you deal with like the unknown and you think about it in the worst possible way, what would you need to do? How would you need to prepare yourself? Start thinking about it. Again, you hope for the best, but sometimes you just plan for the worst. And it's not like you're trying to will it. It was obvious she was not expecting that response. I felt a little awkward standing there, but I actually thought about it. That was really the most transparent, honest discussion to have. We are all working at the discretion of the organizations where we're at. We've all been at organizations where people in the C-suite has gotten impacted, where scientists have gotten and the technologists have been impacted. So to think that anybody is immune, that's not the case. Everything that Olga just said, you can think about it now. What would it look like? Go to more NAMIC events. Continue to build your network. There's a lot of steps that you can do right now. Own your own professional development. Continue to build, with mentoring and sponsorship. And also think about who you can bring along as well, who you could mentor, who you can coach. Think about what your replacement looks like and how you help somebody else get into your seat.
Oh,
Somebody
I
gave
love that.
me, sorry, just give this one tip because I loved it. I think somebody brought up the performance reviews. Go back to that. For me, sometimes remembering all the things that I've done, because I just, 20 something year of career that like kind of gets forgetful sometimes. But every time you have performance review, update your resume because there's going to be some key accomplishments that maybe you'll want to translate to like a live document.
Oh, I really love that. And Ramses, I think you just answered Crystal's question. You just gave some really, really good tips on that. I do see, let me see, I'm really scanning the questions to see what other questions. Let me ask this. What's one piece of advice you would give to professionals looking to embrace the next chapter with both confidence and clarity? Who wants to take that one? Just one piece of advice.
Trust yourself, trust the process.
Love that. Amy?
I would say own your story and own your own growth up until, that's all your story. And also know that we're all writing our next chapters, right?
Yep. Ramses?
Take care of your mental health. Think about all those things that's important to you and just make sure that you have, balance or healthy integration so that you're not completely reliant or dependent on one thing for your identity.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, really, really good nuggets. Amaya.
I recently found an exercise that made you evaluate the things that you do in your job or whatever job you have, and makes you rate what activities you find engaging, and then what activities were you energized by or were you not energized by. So I think that's a really, those are a really interesting way to think about it. And the advice I have is how can you, as you make the step to the next thing, make sure you're in an environment that's really going to maximize the energy that you gain from the environment that you're working in, so you can do your best work. So just the next job is always the next chance to tap more fully into your purpose and your strongest skills.
Excellent. Olga, I do have a question from someone who wanted to know, did you use personal funds or a business loan to start your business?
Personal funds. I really was having this, I called it a career identity crisis. Because for me, given like growing up in corporate America and loving what I do, right? I mean, there's always politics, there's always things we don't love, but I actually really love the path, the career path I chose. Um, so when I went to kind of be independent, it was just my own investment, whether it was like a website or, networking events and such. So I didn't really ever cross that. I wasn't always all in. I mean, that's the reality. That's the lesson that I learned in the process. Over the course of 2 years, I realized I was never fully in because I still felt like I was being pulled in. Because for me, it just felt a bit lonely. And I just missed being part of a larger group, team, collaborating with people, creating a larger impact, not just on the individuals, but actually larger impact on the company's revenue, right? Driving high performance. So so I didn't ever fully go in, and that was the reason. And so after like a year and a half, I recognized that and continued to pursue opportunities. And eventually, it was a great way for me to try this, venture in my life and my career. And it's not over because I still sort of kind of dabble a little bit in it. And I also think that after my next career, I'll come back to it. After my next career chapter, I'll come back to it. So it was just it's like a building blocks for something in the future.
Thank you. Oh my goodness. It is 5:27. We have about 3 minutes to go. We have shared so much. I feel like we could do a part two and a part three and a part four of this very conversation. First, I want to thank all our audiences for joining us today. And I want to thank our amazing panelists. Please give them some love, give them some emojis. As I think about not a conclusion point, but a lot of the nuggets that have been shared with all of us today, I want to emphasize a couple of things. The first one is your health is your wealth, right? And so Ramses talked about really taking care of your mental health. I'm going to talk about just taking care of your health, right? Prioritize your health. If you can prioritize your health and your mental space, you'll find that that is the fast battle to really gaining clarity around many, many things that we struggle with, right? So find that space that energizes you, that gives you purpose, whatever it is. We've talked about transferable skills. We've talked about finding jobs. We've talked about how to manage those transitions, and that sometimes not everything is going to be part of that job description. What I want to encourage you is, if you're really looking to make that shift, right, not just in industry, but maybe even in roles and in skills, a really good place to do is volunteer. I've always said this, if you're in a lot of our webinars, is find a volunteer role that will give you the skills in that area that you're trying to grow, so that then you can test that. Volunteers don't get fired, right? So that is the safest way to test and try out a new skill that you could actually put on your resume, right? So let's say you want to move from HR to marketing. I recommend you go and find a marketing volunteer role where you can test your skills, because you could always say, I worked for Ramcess Development and I worked as a volunteer and I developed their marketing portfolio, and here are my results. So there are opportunities for you to gain new skills that may not require high risk, but if you're really trying to make that change, it's never too late. Do not let age, do not let industry be a barrier. You have examples here of people who've navigated multiple industries, and I want to encourage you to really think broadly, think outside the box, right? I always say, unless you're a neurosurgeon who can only do brain work, the rest of the other stuff is very transferable, right? There was somebody once who shared that they were on a plane and somebody went into medical distress, and there was a primary doctor and a neurosurgeon, and he looked at the primary doctor and said, I can't do anything, right? Many of us are not that specialized, and so there are opportunities, and I think you had them across the board. Trust in yourself, and then trust your network. As Ramcess, thank you for that plug, by the way. Attend our webinars. These webinars are designed for members like you. Come to the conference, build your network. Looking for a job does not begin the day you say you're looking for a job. It is an ongoing networking opportunity, and then those opportunities come. Build networks that really matter, and not just when you need to leverage them. I want to thank all our panelists. Thank you all for all the love. I have been your host, Anne-Marie Burton, and we hope to see you next month for one of our master classes. Until then, thank you, keep coming, and we look forward to growing and learning together. Until next time, bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank you,
much.
everyone. Best of luck.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.